In this video, we will show you how to create a powerful appointment booking chatbot using Voiceflow. In this step-by-step tutorial, we'll guide you through the process of writing code and building a chatbot that allows users to easily book appointments using a full calendar. The key features you'll learn to implement are, firstly, dynamic calendar integration. Users can visually select dates and times for appointments in the calendar showing the available time slots. Secondly, intelligent booking. The chatbot can avoid double bookings and overlapping appointments by checking the time slots before allowing the user to confirm the selection. Also, the booked time slots are not clickable. Thirdly, data storage. The chatbot saves booked events to the Voiceflow knowledge base after the user booking an appointment. Also, the chatbot fetches the data from the knowledge base and marks unavailable time slots on the calendar. Fourthly, real-time updates. The user can change the time slots before confirmation. The chatbot will mark the booked dates and times as read on the calendar instantly. Fifthly, confirmation. After booking an appointment, the user receives instant confirmation of successful bookings. In most other YouTube videos, they use third-party apps to book appointments. Here, we have no need for third-party apps like Calendly or Google Calendar. This tutorial will empower you to build your own custom appointment setter using Voiceflow. Let's get started. On the Voiceflow canvas, we have a simple appointment booking chatbot. It shows the calendar on the chat window, allows the user to pick a time slot to book an appointment, and confirms the time slot after the successful booking. We use an extension to implement the appointment booking. Let us take a quick look. The first block is a message block, where we ask the user to pick a time slot to book an appointment. The second block is a set block. We set the variable VF API key to save the Voiceflow API key because we will use it to communicate with the Voiceflow knowledge base. Another variable is user. I simply set the username here. But in your chatbot, you may fetch the user information after the user's logon. The third block is a custom action block, where we implement an extension for the appointment booking. In the type name, we put the extension's name, ext_appointment booking. This name will be used in the extension. In the extension code, we need match the extension name with the trace type or payload name, which we have entered in the custom action block. In the action body, we are going to pass JSON data to the extension. The JSON data should be placed between two curly braces. We need the Voiceflow API key of this project for the access to the knowledge base. We also pass the username or ID, so that we know who has booked the appointment with what time slot. Again, in your chatbot, you can use many other ways to fetch the user information. In the path, we have a complete path, where the chatbot will move after the extension is done. You may add other paths according to your needs. We turn on the stop on action so that the chatbot will wait until the user finishes booking an appointment. After that, we use a set block to save the variables. We extract the booked time using the last event.payload.bookedTime. The last event is a global variable provided by Voiceflow, which can save the response from the custom action. In this case, the response is returned by the extension. The payload data is passed from the extension. We will show you later in the code. The next variable is the file ID. After the user booking an appointment, we will save the booked time slot to the knowledge base. If successful, the knowledge base returns a file ID, so we can extract the ID and save it in the variable. In the last message block, we confirm the successful booking and show to the user the booked time slot with start time and end time. I also show the knowledge base file ID just for reference and debug. In your chatbot, you do not have to do so. This is a simple chatbot demo for appointment booking. Next, we are going to write code. We will use localhost to build a simple website and integrate the Voiceflow chatbot on the website. In the www folder, I have created a folder with the website name, VF Appointment. We add a new file with the name of index.html. In this file, we have a HTML doc. In the head, we enter the title of the website, Voiceflow Appointment Booking. We need the full calendar CSS and JS files for the calendar styling and functions. I have put the links at the description of this video, and you can find them there, and you can copy them to your chatbot. If interested, we can go to Google and enter full calendar. For the search results, we can click the first link. We can go to their website and click on the docs to read a lot of information there. You can get yourself familiar by reading the docs like date and time, events, resources, etc. There is tons of information on the website. The getting start would be the first step you want to go. If you have time, you can take a look at all the interesting and useful docs. For now, if you follow along with the video, you can just write code and you will have a running chatbot at the end. Back to our code, as we have done the head, we are going to write the code for the body section. The first div is an H2 div with the words as Voiceflow book an appointment. This will show on the web page. Now we have a very simple website, and let us test it out. In the browser address, we enter localhost/vfappointments/index.html. We see the words Voiceflow book an appointment in H2 style. This means we have a working website, and we can move to the next step to embed our chatbot to this website. In the code, we will paste the chatbot widget code before the closing tag of body. So, when running the website, the chatbot widget code will be loaded after all other code has been loaded, like the full calendar CSS style file and the JS file pulled from their website. In order to embed the chatbot to the website, we need to get the widget code. Let us publish the chatbot, and click the Embed Widget button. We see the code snippet. We need to paste the code snippet before the closing body tag of the HTML file. This code includes the Voiceflow runtime URL, which is needed for the implementation of the chatbot. It also has the project ID and version ID, and other information. Let us make a copy. Back to the HTML file, we paste the code snippet before the closing body tag. Because we are going to import an extension to the chatbot, we need to change the type to module. If you do not make the change, the extension might not work. In the following, we are going to write code for the extension. In the same folder, we add a new file, and name it as extensionappointments.js. In this JavaScript file, we will write code to implement the full calendar to allow the user to book an appointment. We will have an extension object, and we need to export the object to the chatbot. We define a const variable to save the extension object to be exported to the chatbot. Let us name the object as VF Appointment Booking Extension, indicating the extension will implement the appointment booking. Many functions are not supported by Voiceflow's JavaScript block or function block. In this case, we'd better to use an extension. In the extension object, we define the name as VF Appointment Booking. This is not critical, and you may choose a name you want. Next, we need to define the type of this extension. There are two types of extensions, response and effects. Response type renders a custom widget/extension. Effects do not render an extension. Here, we are using response to render the extension to allow user to book appointments. Next, we will check if the trace type matches the extension name. We have a trace object. We have the extension name that has been passed in the trace. We need to check if the names match here. So it is important to ensure you enter the same name. Otherwise, they do not match and we will have a false boolean. We go back to Voiceflow. We will copy the extension name entered in the custom action block instead of entering the name manually because you may make mistakes during typing the word. In the custom action block, we have entered the name, ext_appointment booking. Let us make a copy. We paste the name to match the trace type. This is better than manually entering the name because it is possible to have typos. Besides checking the trace type, we also can check the trace payload. The name can be passed in the payload, so we need to get the name from the payload and check if it matches the extension name. If neither the trace type nor the payload name attribute matches the extension name, we will not be able to implement the extension. So, make sure you have entered the right name in the custom action block, and both names match. The next part is the render, where our code is going to be implemented to allow the user to book appointments on the calendar. We have two arguments, trace and element. These are global variables provided by Voiceflow. We can extract the parameters from the trace payload. Recall, in the custom action block, we have entered a parameter VF API key, which saves the Voiceflow API key to be used for the access to the knowledge base. The parameter can be passed in the trace payload, and we can extract the parameter and use it in the extension. We define a const variable named as VF API key. We use the trace payload to get the Voiceflow API key using the name VF API key, and save it in the const variable. Otherwise, we set the variable as null. We have another parameter passed in the custom action blocks body, which is the username or ID. We extract it from the trace payload, and save it in the const variable user ID. Again, in your chatbot, you can have many other ways to extract the user information and pass it to the extension. Then, you can use the trace payload to extract the data and save it in the variable. This is necessary because we need to know who has booked the time slot. We are going to implement the code in the try-catch block so that we can catch errors if there is any. In the catch block, we have the error argument, and we are going to simply log out the error message in console. You may also return an error or debug trace to Voiceflow. You may watch our previous video showing how to do that. This is very important for debugging. As we have two const variables, VF API key and user ID, which save the data extracted from the trace payload. We need to validate if they are passed from the custom block. If they are null, we will be unable to carry out the code because these data are needed to communicate with knowledge base and to save the user booking info. If either of these variables is null, we will throw an error object using the new keyword and pass a message string. In the message, we indicate missing the required input variables. When someone sees this message, he will need to check the custom block to see if he has forgot to pass the data there, or something else has gone wrong. If these parameters are provided, we can move to the next step. We will create an element and save it in the const variable calendar container. We will put the calendar div in this container. In order to do that, we use the inner HTML attribute. I put the full calendar CSS file for styling. You may feel strange. Yes, I totally agree. But if I do not do this, the calendar style will go wrong. I have spent a lot of time in figuring this out. If you have a better way to make the style correct, you may please leave a comment to let me know. We add a div with the ID of calendar to display the calendar. Besides the calendar, we will have a modal to confirm booking. We have a div with the ID of booking modal. It contains the words of confirming booking in H3 style. Of course, you can add your own style according to your needs. Here, I will embed the chatbot in the body section, which will occupy the entire browser window, so I choose to use H3 to make it large. We use a paragraph with the ID selected time and display the message to the user, please select a time slot. We also provide two buttons for the user to click. The first button is the confirm button with the ID of confirm booking. The other button is the cancel button with the ID of cancel booking. For these two buttons, we will add callback functions later. As you can see, we have a lot of IDs, just for easy selection. The next is, we add very simple style. For the calendar, we set the max width as 900 pixels, because we use the entire window to embed our chatbot. It is going to be large, but we do not want it to be too large, so we limit the max width. We also define the margin with the top-bottom margin as 0 and the left-right margin as auto. The next one is selecting a class from Voiceflow to display it as block. It displays as a flux by default. But if we do not change it, the calendar style will be messed up. Again, if you have a better solution, you can leave a comment to let me know. After we have added all the sections in the calendar container, we are going to use the append child attribute to append it to the element, which is a global variable provided by Voiceflow. It is necessary in order to let the calendar display in the chat window. Next, we define an array called booked events, which contains the events that have been booked and their date and times will be marked as unavailable in the calendar. We initiate the array with two objects. Each object has 6 key-value pairs. They are the title as booked. The start has the start date and time, and the end has the end date and time. The background color is set as red, which indicates the time slot has been booked and unavailable for booking. You can change the color, but I think red is the most popular one. We also set the editable as false, which means the booked time slot is not editable or bookable. We have the username saved in the booked event. This is important because it tells us who has booked the time slot and has the appointment at that slot. The second event object is similar but with different start and end date and times, and different username. This array of event objects will be loaded on the calendar and display to the user the unavailable or booked time slots. Next, we use the query selector attribute and the element ID to select all the elements in the calendar container, and save them into their corresponding const variables. We have calendar div, selected time, booking modal, confirm booking and cancel booking variables, which will be used later. Next, we define a variable called selected slot, which will save the start time and end time selected by the user. We are going to initialize a full calendar object using the keyword new. The object full calendar has a method called calendar, so we can create a new calendar object. We use the variable named calendar to save the new object. In the arguments, we pass the calendar div and an object with parameters for the calendar setting. In the header toolbar, we set the center to display two buttons which show day grid month or time grid week. When these buttons are clicked, the calendar will display month grids or week grids. You can also set many other display styles. For details, please check out their documents. We set the initial view as day grid month, so when the chatbot displays the calendar to the user for the first time, it will display the month grids. Of course, you can change it to week grids for the initial view if you want. We set the selectable as true, and allow the user to click and select a time slot. We set the editable as false, so the user is not allowed to edit the calendar and modify those booked time slots. For the events, we add the booked events array, so the event objects in the array will be loaded onto the calendar and marked as read, which will be unable to select. In the select, we have a function which accepts an argument called info. Info is an object containing the selected slot information with the start time and end time. We can log out the info object on the console to see details. Using the info object, we can check if the selected time slot conflicts with the booked events. We define a const variable called conflict to save the result. If there is a conflict, it will have a true value, otherwise, it will be false. We check the event objects in the booked event array using the sum method. The sum method tests whether at least one element in the array passes the test implemented by the provided function. It returns true if at least one element passes the test, otherwise, it returns false. For each event object, we compare the event end time with the selected slot start time. If the event end time is later than the selected start time, it means there is an overlap, so, there is a conflict. We also compare the event start time with the selected slot's end time. If the event start time is earlier than the selected slot's end time, it means there is an overlap, so, there is a conflict. If both are true, the function will return a true value. This means there is at least one booked event time conflicting with the newly selected time slot. If the conflict is true, we give an alert to warn the user with this time slot is already booked. Please choose another time. We then use calendar unselect method to clear the user selection, and simply return. After the user selecting a time slot, we need to show the selected time slot to the user, and if the user thinks it is okay, he can confirm his selection. We will implement this in the booking modal. First, we save the info to the variable selected slot we have defined previously. We will use it later. In order to show the start time and end time selected by the user, we display them in the selected time div, and use the inner HTML attribute to change the words. We can extract the start time from info. If you log out info on the console, you can see the details of the object, which show info has an attribute of start containing the start time, and end containing the end time. We use the toLocale string method to convert the time to locale time. We do the same thing for the end time, and display the start and end time of the selected slot to the user for him to confirm the selection. The next parameter is event overlap. We set it as false because we do not want the user to book an overlapped time slot. After all the settings are done, we can now render the calendar, so the calendar will be shown on the chat window to the user. Next, we are going to handle the booking confirmation. Once the user has selected a time slot, we display the start time and end time on the booking modal. If the user feels everything is correct, he can click the Confirm button to confirm the booking. We add an event listener to the Confirm button. We use the event trigger as click. When the user click on the Confirm button, we will implement a function to carry out tasks in the backend. We check if the selected slot is not null. We have assigned the variable selected slot with the object called info. If it is not null, we can extract the information of user selection. We add new booked event to the calendar and display it to the user. The calendar has a method called addEvent. It can accept an object as the argument. In the object, we pass in key-value pairs for the event setting parameters. We set the title as booked to indicate the time slot has been booked and unavailable. We set the start using the start time of the selected slot variable. We set the end using the end time of the selected slot variable. We set the background color as red, which is consistent with what we have done previously. We set the editable as false. We will need to add the newly booked event to the booked events array, which will be saved to the knowledge base. We use the push method to add the new event. The new event is same as the one that we have added to the calendar. We can make a copy and paste it in the object, which contains the same title, start, end, background color, and editable parameters. But, we are going to save the booked event array to the knowledge base. We will need to change the start to the start string, which is an attribute of the selected slot object. We also change the end to the end string. We still use the red as the background color to mark the booked time slots, which is consistent with what we have done previously. Next, do not forget to add the username or ID, which has been passed and extracted from the trace payload. It is very important because we need to know who has booked this specific time slot. After we have pushed the newly booked event to the booked events array, we want to log out the array on the console, so we can see the change and make sure the new event has been added to the array. After the user has confirmed the booking, we are going to hide the booking modal, so that the calendar cannot be booked again. This can prevent some malicious behaviors. We set the booking modal style to display none. It will disappear after the confirmation. We also use calendar's unselect method to clear any unsaved selections. At this moment, we have the updated booked events array, which contains all the booked events and the newly added event. We need to upload the booked events to the knowledge base, so that the booked events will be saved and can be loaded next time when the chatbot runs for another booking. We have the JSON data saved in the booked events array, and we can directly upload the table data to the knowledge base. I like it because we can save the table data and do not have to use a third-party database to store the table data. We can directly upload and save the data in the knowledge base, which could be more efficient and faster and can reduce complexity. When making API calls, we will use the fetch function, which has arguments of URL and configuration. We will define these two variables to pass to the fetch function for making API calls. First, we define a const variable URL, which is a string containing the address. The URL is the address where the API calls go. The knowledge base API address is provided by Voiceflow. You can find it in Voiceflow's document references. The table means it can accept table data. Without the last word table, it is the address for uploading a document to the knowledge base. Because we will upload table data, we need to include table at the end. In the following, we are going to define another const variable called config to contain API call options. The options include method, headers, and body. The method can be get, post, put, delete, etc., depending on if you will make changes to the data. Headers include authorization, content type, accept, etc. The body includes data to be transferred. For the method, we will use post as we are going to upload the table data to the KB. If we make API calls to retrieve data, we can use the get method. In the headers, as we mentioned previously, we have the authorization, content type, accept, etc. For the accept, we enter application/JSON. For the content type, we also enter application/JSON. This means the data is in JSON format. In the authorization, we need to put the VF API key to access knowledge base. We simply pass the variable that stores the API key. Next, it is the body section where we pass the data to knowledge base. As mentioned previously, the data should be in the JSON string format. We are going to use the method json.stringife to convert the data to the JSON string format. In the argument, we will have an object containing the data, which needs to be converted to JSON. The data has schema, name of the table, and items. Schema also has searchable fields and metadata fields. We will see the details soon. The schema is required. It defines the fields for search and contains the metadata. Searchable fields are an array of fields within each item that can be searched. It supports fields of type string, number, or Boolean. It does not support fields of type array or object. As we have title, start, end, background color, and editable parameters in our event data, we put them in the array of searchable fields. So, after the data uploaded to the knowledge base, we can search data using the title, start, end, background color, or editable parameters. Metadata fields are an array of fields within each item that are considered metadata for additional context. If provided, we can filter by metadata fields. This field is optional, and we do not need it here, so we can neglect it. Next, we need to add the name of the table. This is required and needs to be a unique name identifying the table, so the knowledge base knows what data it is. We have the table name of booked events in this case. The next is an array of items to be included in the table. Our data will go to the items array. Each item can have completely custom fields of various types including string, number, array, or object. In our table, we add the booked events array. These data items will be uploaded to the knowledge base and saved there. In the future, we can directly query the data from the knowledge base. Otherwise, we may need to use a third-party database to store the table data. This is why I like the table data uploaded to the KB directly, which makes the query faster. So far, we have defined the URL and the config. We can make API calls to upload the table data to the knowledge base. We are going to write code to make API calls. We use the fetch function and pass two arguments. One of them is the URL that we have defined previously. The other one is the variable config, an object containing the request information and options. It has all the necessary parameters and the table data that we are going to upload to the knowledge base. The fetch function initiates a network request and returns a promise that resolves to a response object. When the request completes, the promise is resolved with the response object. If the request fails due to some network problems, the promise is rejected. In either case, when the fetch completes, we use the then method to implement the code in the next step. So, our next step is to check if the response succeeds and its status is OK. If the response fails, we will throw an error. We create an error object with the new keyword and pass the argument with a string message. As this step may be due to network failure, we specify the HTTP error, and the user will know it is due to the network error. We also show the status using the response's status attribute. If the fetch is not resolved, the program will stop and throw the error, which will be caught by the catch block and display the error message. On the other hand, if the response status is OK, it will contain the data we need, and we can extract the data for later use. The response object has a JSON method, which can extract the JSON data from the response. So, the next step is to extract the JSON body from the response which contains the data we need, and we can return it for the later use. After the JSON data has returned, we use another then method. It has an argument called result, which is the JSON data returned in the previous step. After we extract the JSON data, we need to check if it is valid. It may be null, or it may not be a JSON object. If either occurs, we cannot move forward and need to stop by throwing an error. We can do the validation using an if clause. We check if the result object is null or the type of the result is not an object. If the result object is null, it means it is empty and does not have the data we need. If the result is not an object, it means it is not a JSON format. For either case, we cannot get the data we need and have to throw an error. Again, we throw an error by creating an error object with the new keyword and passing the argument with a string message. In the error message, we need to indicate what error happens. As the result could be empty, we indicate missing response body from the API. In another case where the response body is not an object, we indicate that it is not valid. With the message, we will know what error occurs. If there is no error, we can move forward to the next step to extract the document ID from the data. After the API call, the response body returns an object in JSON format. It has a data object, which contains the document ID. We can retrieve the document ID and use it later. We define a const variable named docID to save the document ID. As mentioned, the response body has a data object, which contains the document ID. We use result.data.documentID to retrieve the document ID. If we have the document ID, it means that we have successfully uploaded the table data to the knowledge base, and the API has returned the document ID for this specific table data. If we get this far, it means everything works smoothly. In the next step, we are going to return a trace to the chatbot. We use the Voiceflow Chats Interact endpoint to pass the trace to the chatbot. In the trace object, we define the type of the trace as complete. This needs to be same as the path we have defined in the custom action block. We will pass the document ID in the payload. In the payload, we are going to pass a name as ID with the value of document ID, which is saved in the docID variable. And we put a default value as 0 if the docID is not available. We also pass a name as booked time, which has a string value containing the start time and the end time of the time slot selected by the user. It is better to use the selected slot variable instead of the info variable, because, at this point, we want to save the confirmed time slot in case the user gives the calendar another click and the info will contain different data. So far, we have finished the code to implement the calendar loading, time selection, user confirmation, and data uploading to the knowledge base. So far, so good. Next, we are going to handle the canceling of booking. If the user is not ready to book an appointment and wants to cancel booking, we provide a cancel button. The user can click the cancel button to stop the process. Just like the confirmation button. We add an event listener to the cancel button. We use the event trigger as click. When the user clicks on the cancel button, we will implement a function to carry out tasks in the backend. We set the selected slot variable as null to clean up any values it may have. After the user has cancelled the booking, we are going to hide the booking modal, so that the calendar cannot be booked again. Again, this can prevent some malicious behaviors. We set the booking modal style to display none. It will disappear after the cancellation. We also use calendar's unselect method to clear any unsaved selections. We log out the string cancelled in the console, so that we know the user has clicked the cancel button to cancel the booking. At this moment, we have finished the majority of coding. We have built an extension which can implement the appointment booking. We have created elements for displaying calendar and booking modal. With this code, the chatbot can show the calendar to the user. And the user can select a time slot to book an appointment. The code will check if the time slot has conflicts with the already booked events. If not, the user can click the confirmation button to confirm the time slot. The code will add the newly booked event to the events array, and upload the table data to the knowledge base and save it there as record for future use. The user also can click the cancel button to cancel the booking if he is not ready yet. The code can catch errors as well. Now, we are ready to import the extension code to the chatbot snippet. In the index.html file, we need to use the import keyword to import an object with the name defined in the extension code. Because it is a long name, and we are trying to avoid any typo, let us go back to the extension file, and make a copy of the object name. We paste it between the curly braces. We need to specify the location of the extension file. As the index.html file and the extension file are in the same folder, we can copy the extension file name and paste it here, and add the JS at the end. In addition, under the version ID, we add render with an object, where we define the mode as embedded and the target as document.body because we want to show the chat window as the whole browser window. Of course, you can embed the chat window to a specific section on your website. We also define the assistant as an object, which contains an extensions array. In the extensions array, we add our extension name. If you have more extensions, you can add their names in the array. Now, we are ready to test the code out on the browser. Before doing that, let us go back to the Voiceflow canvas. We check the knowledge base. It shows an empty knowledge base because we do not have any data source here. We will check it again later after we upload the booked event data to the knowledge base. On the browser, we re-enter the localhost website address, and we see the chat window showing a previous chat. Let me right-click the mouse and select Inspect to open the Developer Tools window. If there is any error, we can see the error on the console. We also can check the values of variables which we want to log out on the console. This is very convenient for debugging. Let us end the old chat and start a new chat. We see the instruction, please pick a time slot to make an appointment. We see the calendar loaded on the chat window. It shows the month and year on the top left. In the middle, we have two buttons, so the calendar can switch from monthly grids view to the weekly grids view. The initial view is the month view as we have set in the extension code. On the right, we have two arrow buttons and we can click to go forward or backward. There is also a Today button. If we click it, the calendar will go back to show today's date. Right now, it is showing today with marking in yellow background, which is October 15th, 2023. We see two booked events on October 13th and 14th. They are marked in red background, so we can easily tell. At the bottom, we can see the booking modal and two buttons for confirmation or cancellation. The style of the calendar looks okay. If we click the arrows to test, we can see the month has moved forward. It works great. We click this button to switch to week view. It looks good. Test the button again, and it works. If we click the Today button, it brings us to the week of today. Today is marked as yellow background, which is Tuesday, October 15th. We can see two booked event with red background. Recall, these two events have been initialized in the booked events array, which have been booked on October 13th and 14th. I like the style, which make it very easy to understand. Let us test to book an appointment. Let's randomly select a time slot and to see if we can successfully book an appointment. Let us click this time slot. But we see an error on the console. It says the selected time is not defined. This is very likely due to typos. We need to check our code to see if there is any misspelling. We have selected time in the booking modal, which looks correct. We move up to the definition of the const variables, and we can see the selected time missing a letter C. Let me add the letter and correct the typo. Now, the selected time has correct spelling. It should be okay. Let us go back to the browser. We close the old chat window and start a new chat. We see the calendar loaded. We give it a couple of clicks to test. All looks good. Let us randomly select a time slot and click on the time slot. We see the background color becomes blue. At the bottom, we can see the start time and end time of the time slot we just have selected. Let us click the Confirm button to book the appointment. We see the selected time slot has become red, which means the time slot has been booked. This looks good. However, we see an error shown on the console. It says uncaught type error, cannot read properties of null. The error occurs on code line 117. It is related to the booking modal. In the code, we see on line 58, it is correctly spelled. The ID is also correct. We go up to the inner HTML, where we initially define all the elements. We see on line 19, the modal is missing the letter A, so let us add the letter A to correct the typo. Let us go back to the browser and refresh the web page. We close the chat window, start a new chat. We see the calendar has been loaded, but somehow, there is a glitch with the style. Let us do a couple of clicks to test. All looks good. If we try to select different time slots, we can see the blue color updated to indicate the selection. At the bottom, the booking modal also has updated the start time and end time of the selected time slot. If we select the slot and click the Confirm button to book the appointment, we see the booking modal has disappeared, and the background of the selected time slot has become red. This works good. However, we see another error shown on the console. It shows the HTTP error with the code of 400. This means there is something wrong during the API call to upload the table data to the knowledge base. We need to check our code to see what has gone wrong with the API call. On line 141, we have the fetch function, and we pass the argument config for the API call options. In the config, we have the booked events array containing the item's data in JSON to be uploaded to the knowledge base. In the booked event, we have set the editable as false, but it is a Boolean. When we upload it to the knowledge base, we need to use string instead of Boolean. I spent a lot of time in solving this issue. We need change the Boolean false to string by adding the quotes to it. After this, the booked event looks okay, and the API call should work. Let us go to the browser and refresh the web page. We start a new chat. After the calendar loaded, we do a few clicks to test. All looks good. Let us click the Today button to bring us to the today's week. We pick a time slot and click the Confirm button to book an appointment. The selected time slot becomes red. We can see the words entered in the last message block on the Voiceflow canvas. Thank you. You have made an appointment at start time and end time. It also shows the file ID. This works perfectly. We do not see any errors on the console. This means we have successfully booked an appointment, and the data has been uploaded to the knowledge base with the file ID returned by the knowledge base. As we have uploaded the data, we are going to check the knowledge base to see if we have the file there. We go to the Voiceflow canvas and refresh the web page. We can see the file has been uploaded to the knowledge base. The file name is Booked Events. We click to see the chunks generated by Voiceflow. We have 3 booked events in JSON format. The first 2 events are the data we entered when we initialized the array. The last one was added after we had confirmed the appointment booking. The whole process worked fantastically. Now, we have an appointment booking chatbot. The user can pick a time slot visually on the calendar and confirm the appointment. The chatbot will save the booked event and upload the data and save it in the knowledge base. This is wonderful. As we have the data saved in the knowledge base, the next step is to retrieve the booked events from the knowledge base and load them onto the calendar. So, the user can see what time slots have been booked and unavailable. He, then, can accordingly pick an available time slot and book an appointment. In order to retrieve the data in the knowledge base, we are going to use the Query API. We go to Voiceflow's doc page, where it shows the Query API endpoints. It has the URL where the query should go. On the page, we can see some examples. We also have the body parameters we need to pass during the query. It also shows the response of the query at different status. In the body parameters, we can see the chunk limit, which has a default value of 2. We can set it with a large number, say, 10, to increase the number of chunks returned by the knowledge base during the query. We select the synthesis as false, because we do not need the AI to synthesize the answer. Instead, we only need the raw data as the chunks. The question is required. As we want to retrieve the data, we can simply enter the name of the data table we saved in the knowledge base. Voiceflow will search the data in this table, find the mostly matched data, and return all the booked events data to us. We enter the name of the table, Booked Events. If we go back to our code, we have the booked events array as the table name. This table name should be unique for the JSON data saved in the knowledge base. When Voiceflow generate chunks, we know which table they are from. You can add your own table name, but ensure the name is unique. The JSON data in this specific table will be fetched and returned by Voiceflow. In our case, we do not use tags. If needed, you may use tags to ensure the accuracy of the returned data. On the right, we can see the code for the query. It contains the basic parameters. It can be updated in real time. So, when we change the question, or the chunk limit, the code will be automatically updated. In the header, we need to enter the Voiceflow API key in order to use the query. We can click to select the language. You can see lots of languages, such as C, C++, Java, PHP, Python, etc. We should select JavaScript, because that is the language we are using in our code. We can see in the options, we have the method, the headers, and the body containing the chunk limit and question we entered. You can click the Try It button to see the instant results. We are going to use the entire code in our extension to retrieve the data from the knowledge base. It has the options, the fetch function, and the response after the promise is finished. It also has the catch function to catch errors. It is ready to use. So, we can simply click the button to make a copy. We can paste it to our extension code and we do not have to write the code from scratch. We will only need to do a little modification in order to make it fit our needs. Let us find the booked events array, and we have initiated the array. We are going to paste the code before the array, because we will use the code to fetch the data from the knowledge base, and the booked events array will contain all the data saved in the KB. We put a comment to indicate the following code fetches the existing booked events from KB. In the option, we have the method post. Both the accept and content type are application/JSON. The authorization has the Voiceflow API key, and we can replace the string with the variable which has been retrieved from the custom action block using the trace payload. In the body, we have the chunk limit. Set as 10, synthesis set as false. Because we do not need the AI to synthesize the answer, we can remove the settings part, which sets the parameters for AI synthesis. We are going to retrieve the raw chunk data without synthesis. We simply set the question as the name of our table, so, we expect the KB to return only the JSON data in the table, because the table name is unique. In the fetch function, we have the URL where the query goes and the query options. The API call will return the booked events data. We have uploaded and saved the booked events array to the KB after we push the newly booked time slot to the array. The fetch function is going to return the JSON data in the booked events array, and we will need to save the fetched data and load the data onto the calendar. So, we define the variable booked events as an empty array, and we can add the fetched JSON data in the array. As we have defined booked events array, we can comment out the old one. After the fetch function, we use the JSON method to get the response body in JSON format. Then, we are going to deal with the return JSON response. We log out the response on the console. We will add more functions. In this step, we will modify the data chunks and retrieve the booked events data. We define a variable called chunks to save the chunk data extracted from the response using the response's chunks attribute. The chunks have many parameters. The content contains the data that we need. So, we map out the content array. Then, we use JSON.stringIfA method to convert the chunk data into a string. We can log out the chunk string on the console. This can help us understand the structure of the string data. When you see the string, you can figure out the difference between the string data, and we need to convert the string data to the JSON format. I spent quite some time in figuring out how to do so. This comes out the long line of code to replace the commas, the semicolons, the colons, and the brackets, etc. with the correct quotes, because in JSON format, we have quotes for both the keys and values. We need to add the quotes to the string. After this, the string is in the correct format, and we can parse the string to JSON. The array contains the booked events data in JSON format. If needed, we can log out the chunks on the console, and we can see the details to ensure they are in the correct format. As we have all the data fetched from the knowledge base, we are going to add these data to the booked events array, which will be loaded to the calendar. We use a for loop to implement this. We loop through the entire chunks array, and push every element, in this case, the booked event data, into the booked events array. So, the booked event array has all the previously booked events to be loaded on the calendar. Again, we can log out the booked events array on the console to see the details, and check if the data format is correct, and contains the data as expected. For the catch function, because we already have the catch block in our code, we do not need the catch function, so, we can just delete the catch function. Now we have the code to fetch the booked events data from the knowledge base, and we save the fetched data to the booked events array. The booked events are loaded on the calendar to display to the user. This completes the fetching process. As we have the promise, we should include the entire calendar loading, booking, and confirmation in the last then method. If we do not include them, they will not be synchronized. When the data fetching is not finished yet, the calendar may have been already loaded. In this case, the booked events array is still empty, and the calendar will be unable to mark the booked time slots. So, we need to put these processes at the last then method. We need move the curly brace and the bracket to the end of all the processes. We can put them right at the end of the try block, right before the closing curly brace of the try block. In this way, the whole process will be implemented after the data fetching, and the booked events array will be filled with the booked time slots data. So far, we have finished coding. Our code can fetch booked events, load them on the calendar, and allow the user to book an appointment. Also, the code uploads the booked events and saves them to the knowledge base. Let us test it out on the browser. Back to the browser, let us refresh the web page. And, then, we start a new chat. We can see the calendar has been loaded. We see there are 3 booked events, 2 of them are from the initialized array, and the third one is added after our booking confirmation. If we click the button to see the week view, we have the 3 events shown in red. This means the chatbot has successfully fetched the data from the knowledge base and loaded them on the calendar. Let us test to make a new appointment. We select a time slot and press the confirmation button. We see the time slot has become red. But we have an error shown on the console. It is an HTTP error with the code 409 in code line 180. It looks like when the code uploads the data to the knowledge base, we encountered the API call error. In the code, we can see the fetch function in line 180, where we have the error. In line 160, we have the URL to make the API calls. This URL is for uploading the file to the KB. It has worked before, but we have an error now. It is because we have already had the file in the knowledge base. If we want to upload the modified file with the same table name, we need to allow Voiceflow to overwrite the file. At the end of the URL, we need to add a question mark, followed by overwrite equals true. After this correction, the API call should be able to upload the file and overwrite the old file with the new file which contains the newly booked event. Let us test it out on the browser. We refresh the web page and start a new chat. Again, we see 3 booked events, because the one we tested previously has not been uploaded to the KB due to the error we encountered. Let us click a time slot to book an appointment. We click the confirmation button. We can see the booked time slot has turned to red. At the bottom, we see the words again, "Thank you. You have made an appointment at start time and end time." We also see the file ID. This means the entire process has been gone through, and we now have 4 booked events. There is no error on the console. If we go to Voiceflow canvas, we can check the knowledge base. We should be able to see the table data with 4 booked events there. Let us click the table to see the chunks. We do see 4 data chunks. The first 3 chunk data has been uploaded in the previous knowledge base. The 4th one is the newly added data. This is fantastic. As everything works as expected, next, we are going to change the username. Let us change the username to Peter. So, we can test if there is any problem when a different user books the appointments. Let us publish the chatbot to save all the changes. Otherwise, it will run the old version without changes. Back to the browser, we refresh the web page and start a new chat. After the calendar has been loaded, again, we can see 4 booked events shown on the calendar. We click the button to switch to week view. We see 4 booked events marked on the calendar. Let us click a time slot to make an appointment, and, then, confirm the selection. We see the newly booked time slot has turned to red. At the bottom, we can see the start and end time of the booked time slot. If we go back to the Voiceflow canvas, we can check the knowledge base to see the updated file. We click the table to see the data chunks, and we can see 5 JSON data chunks. The fifth data contains the new username of Peter with the event information. This tells us the chatbot has added the newly booked event with another user. This wraps up today's video. In this video, we have showed you how to build your own custom appointment setter using Voiceflow. Users can visually select dates and times for appointments. The chatbot saves booked events to the Voiceflow knowledge base for easy access. There is no need for third-party apps like Calendly or Google Calendar. Hope this video helps. If you like this video, please subscribe and give a thumbs up. If you have any comments and suggestions, please let us know. Thank you for your support.